Once again, thanks again. We look forward to this great discussion today. And I'm going to turn over to Mike Garcia, who's our moderator, and let him introduce himself and the rest of the panelists.
Thanks, Ken. Again, this is Mike Garcia with Apps Associates. And again, as Ken mentioned, today we're talking about current trends in the utility industry. But in particular, how we're seeing many utilities go through a modernization of their ERP system. So we're seeing a lot of utilities and public sector entities are really dealing with a lot of transformation of those entities and really being forced to do more with less and produce the same innovative results and solutions for their customers. So today we're going to talk with some panelists that are from the community, practitioners that really are going to help us understand how they're dealing with some of those pressures and what are some of the efforts they're making. In this case, modernization of the ERP system, and how they're feeling about the continuing need to innovate and provide more with potentially smaller budgets, smaller teams, and really ongoing larger expectations from the customers they serve. So we have a group of panelists here. Before we get into that, let me just talk to you a little bit about our approach today. We're going to use one of the Oracle customers and Apps Associate customers, Central SAN, Central Contra Costa Sanitary District, or Central SAN as they're known, as the backdrop of our discussion, as they have significantly gone through a modernization journey and having implemented multiple Oracle Fusion modules as part of that process that cover Oracle Cloud ERP, EPM, and HCM. So the Central SAN folks that are here are going to help us with that, and we really appreciate that dialogue today. So without further ado, let me introduce our panelists first off. From Central SAN, Charles Mallory is the IT manager at Central SAN, and he brings over 2 decades of IT management and experience to the public sector, to the last few years with Central SAN. So he really has been the leader of this area and continues that really had a lot of experience building teams and building change and innovation within all the different locations he's been in. And he's been through multiple ERP implementations in his career. So really thank Charles for being the focal point of our discussion today. And Charles, thank you for being here and welcome to this morning.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome. Also on the panel from Oracle, Glenn Seninger, Area Vice President of the Oracle Public Sector. Glenn has a long background working with Oracle applications or Oracle in general, and really is part of that team that helps counties and special districts and other municipal organizations drive the most from their Oracle implementation. So Glenn, thank you for being here also.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Welcome. Also part of our panel within Apps Associates also, Mark Malinek. Mark is the managing director of our vertical here for utilities and has over 28 years of experience working with the ERP and or energy and water products that Oracle has. So Mark brings a wealth of experience as we see those two product suites come together sometimes. So he's going to be a part of our panelist discussion also. Mark, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and I look forward to a good conversation with everyone.
Okay. Just a little bit about our discussion topics here. If you could go to the next slide there, Ken. We're going to just have a brief agenda that we'll use as a guide of our discussion. And basically really want to just ask Charles initially here to give us a brief overview of Central SAN and who they are, what their mission is in the utility industry and the customers they serve. We're going to go through some discussion about some of the key drivers in terms of what they were looking for with a new solution to replace the ERP system that they had, and how they landed with Oracle. Some of the discussions on that. We'll talk then about the project itself. So they're going through a 2-year project overall, or a program really of projects that implemented these. So really talk about some of the benefits they were looking for and that they experienced, and also along with some of the challenges that we've seen as we go forward. We want to talk about ongoing support a little bit. Since they've been live for a number of months here at this point. Really see how things are looking as we go forward, their ongoing enhancements, things that they're looking forward to see from Oracle as quarterly rollouts happen, continuing going forward. And then, we're going to wrap up with just some dialogue amongst the panelists to tell us about some of the trends we're seeing in the industry and so forth. So And then we'll have a Q&A. As Ken mentioned, we invite questions all during the course of our discussion. But we'll still have a Q&A period at the end here for those that want to wait.
Yeah. Yeah, feel free to ask questions as we go along. We'll try to answer them as we go and stuff.
Okay. All right, very good. All right. So again, after going through that, Charles, let me start with you if I could. And we really wanted to, again, thank you for being here. And really, I'd ask you to tell us a little bit more about Central Sand. Things about the customers they serve, the size of organization it is. We know you're a special district, and what that might mean and what that entails as you serve your customers in the state of California. So, Charles, if we could start there.
Yeah, sure, Mike. Thank you. Thank you for the nice intro, Mike. Central Sand provides wastewater collection, treatment, and disposal services, recycled water for production and distribution, and household hazardous collections. For the most part, Central Sand serves close to 500,000 people, 500,000 residents, and probably more than 15,000 businesses, covering about 3,000 parcels for about 146 square miles, multiple cities. It is, it's important from a wastewater standpoint and/or collections. One of our number one mission, quite frankly, is to protect public health and to protect the environment. We keep it pretty simple in that regard. So overall, that is who Central Sand is. Be more than willing to answer additional questions if you have about Central Sand.
I think that's great, Charles. Thank you. And size of the organization, again, we know that a lot of the utilities run very lean and mean, if you will, with their number of employees, but at the same time, are very, very complex organizations in many ways in their needs. So, but generally can give us some, feel for the number of employees and things of that nature.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct, Mike. We have just over 300 employees, but we're probably supporting an additional 50 or 60 consultants or so. So we're saying about 350 people that we support. So we're relatively lean and mean with respect to that. So we take pride in being as efficient as we possibly can because we are so small.
Okay, very good. So as Charles, you went down the process, your team was looking for a new ERP solution. What were some of the reasons that really came to being? And in terms of was it aging software? What type of infrastructure was in place, and some of the risks of different things? What were some of those key reasons that Central Sand really was in the position to look to modernize their ERP and move to a potential new solution?
Yeah, I'm smiling, Mike, because you just answered all of my questions, right, for me in that regard. But quite frankly, we were using aging software. The support for that particular software had lapsed. We didn't see an upgrade path with that particular software. So from a financial standpoint, from a functional standpoint, it made sense for us to start to look for an actual replacement. That list can go on and on and on. We have many reasons, right? Comprehensive access to real-time data. You want one source of truth with respect to that. Previous ERP really only handled a small group of processes, and reporting was tough, so forth and so on. So reporting and single source of the truth was important to us. It didn't improve connectivity. And when I say connectivity, I'm talking about updates. Being in the cloud, we are provided those updates, so I don't have to worry about updating systems. Enhanced connectivity, automation across many processes, and then ultimately the ongoing support going forward, and then the potential for growth, right? We needed a system that we can actually grow within. So those were some of our major reasons for wanting to move off of the older platform.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add, Mike. So yeah, Charles, I don't think we got a chance to talk about, but one of the things that I've always seen from my clients is that as the technology gets older and older, it gets harder and harder to find, hire, and maintain the employee relationship with the IT staff that does this for this. So it's another challenge for them to keep finding these resources that can maintain it. So.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Part of the problems that we had is that it was on premise, it was aging. We really had one or two people that supported that particular platform, right? So there's a risk there when you only have one person, two people that are actually supporting it, one from the system standpoint, and then one from either a billing or an operational standpoint. So that's a huge risk that we were able to mitigate as well. So that's a good point.
Hey,
Yeah,
Mike, let me jump in, Mike, real quick. I was going to just say, I'm fascinated by this idea, Charles. 350 employees. You had to have people saying, wait a minute, Oracle's got to be way too big for an entity like yours. How did you end up, I guess, selecting Oracle? Because again, I think detractors would say maybe this is too big of a system for an entity like yours.
Yeah, that question came up on a number of occasions. But first of all, we had a cross-functional team make a selection with respect to where we were actually going. But some of the things that we looked into in terms of selecting Oracle is the single source of the truth, the ability to grow, if you will, with the system as you advance, we can advance. Additionally, we started looking at one source of the truth where we can get as many of our processes integrated under one umbrella as possible. Really thought that would ultimately benefit us and give us an integrated solution, quite frankly. So we didn't have to support a bolt-on payroll system. We didn't have to support any additional bolt-ons relative to an onboarding system. So that was one of the major factors in selling the system to the board of directors and others, is that all of the other bolt-ons were included if we so choose to use them.
Yeah. And I would imagine, Mark, Apps Associates sees customers like Central Sands that have complexities that are much more kind of representative of a bigger entity, I'm assuming. Because, Charles, your requirements, probably, even though the employees don't necessarily describe the complexities that you may have as an entity, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. When we talk about our rates and how we calculate rates, you talk about the changing landscape of employee benefits and who is eligible for this or that. If you're talking about, additional pay relative to being on call, or you're talking about translation pay if you speak multiple languages, or if tracking certifications with respect to additional pay. So there are many complications, and I really don't think that the size of our organization really captures the complexity of what we deal with on a day in and day out basis. So
Yeah, Glenn, to your point, I've worked at a lot of the tier ones, PG&E in your area, Charles, and that notion of they're different by the processes and procedures that they compare to what you guys do is really all that different during the day. It's just a size difference. And as far as implementing the functionality to get to the point where you have everything that you need to run your operation, it's very similar at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that shows in the footprint of applications and the detail and the requirements. We went through the RP process with you. I think there was a pleasant surprise that Oracle was a potential fit for you. At the same time, as you look at the complexities that you have in your business via those requirements, they're very much a fit, from what we saw and obviously what you ended up choosing. So it's a really good point about how that fits with utilities. They're very complex. They run a lot of transactions and a lot of volume, even though, again, a very small number of employees at many times. So, Glenn, I'm curious about what you're seeing from other Oracle customer industry utilities rather of that same size. We're seeing a lot of interest in that tier one solution. It seems like that's the case. We're certainly working with you on several, but curious about your other thoughts on what your other utilities are seeing in that size.
Yeah, I think, the challenge Charles and his evaluation team and many customers face is, again, small organization, but have big company needs. And so I've met with a lot of cities, counties, municipalities who might say, gosh, an Oracle Cloud solution might be a little beyond their reach. But when then we sit down and kind of go through what are their requirements around grants, projects, payroll, we get really, I mean, we can get really deep really quickly, like you said, Charles. I mean, just look at the multiple pay classifications, the pay rates, the calculations. And again, I don't want to get too much into the product, but the ability to create what we call a fast formula, or the ability to handle those complexities. What happens is you run out of runway with some of the lower end solutions, or you have to end up customizing them, right? And that's probably, Charles, that's a bad word in your world, right? We don't want to customize, but in the cloud. So that's kind of what we're seeing. So it's really exciting to see an entity, like Central Sands, be able to get the benefits. I know we're going to talk about security, and we're going to talk about the benefits of this single source or this single stack, but obviously the committee. I'd be curious. So, Charles, maybe for the audience, we have a lot of our customers and prospects do the RFP, they go through the requirements, but at the end of the day, why select Oracle? What was kind of the key one or two things that made you swing that direction?
Okay, yeah. What I would say is that it was an integrated solution in comparative to some of the others that responded to our proposal. It was a bit more integrated. I'll give you an example. We talked about payroll, right? A lot of ERPs, you have to purchase an additional payroll system and bolt it on. Well, that's just another mouth to feed from my perspective. So where we can get that under one umbrella is a huge benefit. As I said, single source of the truth, and the ability to utilize integrated modules. Didn't have to use them and did not use them all on day one, but we also have the ability to grow. Really looked at this decision as, a decade-long decision, quite frankly, right? This is not something that if we had purchased other solutions, I'd be looking at, okay, how do we bolt on this? How do we bolt on that? We probably need to start planning for the next upgrade or the next solution. I think with the Oracle solution, it buys me some time. I can sleep at night. 10, possibly the next 10 to 15, 20 years is a solution that I believe will provide for the organization. So,
Charles, that's great. We'll have another couple of questions on kind of the fit and that growing into it, as you indicated, but we have a question from the audience, if we can take that at this point, if you don't mind. Ken, I believe there's one question already.
I apologize. I don't see it here. Can someone else see it in the chat?
Oh, somebody has their hand up, I believe, in the chat. So maybe if you can check into that and we can come back to it once you get that, if that's okay.
Yeah, and I can just like to add on, Charles. I know we're specifically talking about ERP today, and we're moving away a lot. I see the trend in the industry moving away of what best in breed and moving towards one solution, but that also includes the other products in the enterprise, which could be asset management or CIS billing or field services, where these cities and municipalities want to move towards one vendor to solve all their issues and their problems. So they have less management to do in the future, and the products are more totally integrated. Yeah. So I do see that as a trend that's moving forward in the industry.
Yeah. And it's almost impossible to have everything under one umbrella, but where you can consolidate, it just makes sense to
Yeah.
do so.
Okay. Let's keep on that theme, but move on a little bit. And Charles, you
I
mentioned.
think, hold on, let me interrupt you. I think you've got Amy has her hand
Yeah,
up.
yeah,
So
I
we
think
want to
Yeah.
get to Amy's question, guys. What,
Sure.
did she put it in the chat or can she come off of mute? What, how do you
I
want to do
think
it?
I think she's trying to unmute it and see if she can. Amy, feel free to
you-
ask the question.
Can you hear me?
There she is. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning.
Good morning.
Charles, thanks you so much for sharing. And I know we used your agency as a reference during our selection process. We are in the midst of converting our payroll to, or, bringing the Oracle payroll module online in HCM. How did you guys integrate the payroll portion with your projects module?
How did we integrate? I guess it depends on what it is you're actually trying to do. If you are managing projects,
We are.
okay, we did not manage our projects through that payroll module. We may need to talk about that a little more. But we did use that in terms of setting up a lot of our AP processes and things of that nature. But I'm not directly using the PPM module, I think it's called. We do, however, have project codes. And as people fill out, we have a new timesheet, but as people fill in their actual hours, they will put in a project code, and each of those project codes are either charged to a capital item, charged to a different budget line item, so forth and so on. But we're not specifically managing projects within that module. So I don't know if that answers your question, Amy.
Right, well, one of our main drivers for wanting to bring payroll on is so we could take advantage of the full functionality in the project module for our engineering staff, because we've got a $1 billion CIP plan over the next 10 years, so, okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
we're similar in terms of some of our CIP projects. So I again, within that payroll module, everyone on a project, in terms of the time that they enter into it, they can actually enter into their project code. Then that project code is charged to the appropriate line item. But I'm just not actively using that for construction project management. And if you want to talk about that more, Amy, at some point, we can do that as well.
Yeah,
Okay, you can talk offline, thank you.
great follow-up, Amy. Thank you for the question, and certainly we will be able to get back to you with more details for things that we can't answer today, and hopefully give Charles a little more context also, so that we get a great not only the answer we have, but anything else there. So thank you for that. Did we have another one or somebody in the chat at this point?
I don't think so, unless somebody just wants to type in now or go off mute and ask.
We'll move on. So staying on the theme and just looking at the selection of Oracle, Charles, we've seen that the utility and public sector in general is a little bit slower in adoption than we were seeing. Apps and Oracle have many industries that we focus on, but utilities being one of them, a very big one for us also. We've seen a little more slower adoption of moving to the cloud, and sometimes security was considered to be perhaps one of the reasons. So tell us about your thoughts there, about how you evaluated that and what you've seen, from that security. Glenn mentioned it also, that obviously it's paramount in everybody's mind about having your data in the cloud and so forth. What was Central Sands thought in that regard, and what your experience has been to this point?
Yeah, sure. As it relates to cloud technology, I think we did a couple things, right? First of all, we did our own research, looked at other agencies with respect to that was using cloud technology. And quite frankly, we found that it was equally safe as what we had on premise. And in most cases, it was probably safe given the age of our software, so forth and so on. You know, an ERP project, in my opinion, starts a year before you even select a vendor, right? Number one, you need to be looking at and doing your research with respect to cloud technology, security. What are your internal processes, as well as educating board of directors, senior executive team with respect to why you believe it's secure, why it could potentially even be more secure than what's on print. So as I said before, you know, this project should start a year in advance, prepping people for the actual change that's coming to pass. So as it relates to my current experience, we have had absolutely no problems at all. As a matter of fact, I think many people sleep better at night knowing that our systems are actually in the cloud. We do have multi-factor authentication. Additionally, I think cloud technology, one of the other ways I was able to sell it is from a disaster recovery standpoint. In the event that we lose something on-prem, we lose connectivity, I can send people home. They can continue to access Oracle Cloud from Starbucks, from their home connection via VPN and multi-factor authentication. So again, I know that there's a lot of concern about security out there relative to the cloud, but we were able to overcome that and share with our board of directors some of the trends and why we thought it was a safe investment.
Okay. I think we have a question from Gary too, Mike.
Okay.
Gary Cherison. So Gary, feel free to just chime up and ask the question.
Hey, Gary, you're muted. Can they unmute themselves?
He said no questions. Okay.
Okay.
That was a hand raise.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Well, let's, Charles, thank you. Glenn, I don't know if you had any final comments on that. We're going to move on.
I was just going to chime in. Again, I'm not a public sector expert nor cybersecurity expert, so I'm going to just parrot what I've heard from the industry and what I heard actually a week or so ago at our GFOA conference in Orlando. There was quite a bit of focus on the sessions at GFOA related to security, Charles. And I think I shared with you as we were chatting before the conference or our webinar started today that this is obviously a hot topic across all of public sector. And I guess I find it interesting how the ransomware attacks, the phishing schemes, and efforts that are being made specifically on municipalities, water, sewer, electric, transportation, because some of these bad actors, I think, look at those areas as vulnerabilities. Like you mentioned, you fortunately moved off an aging platform and others haven't. And so the theme in this conference was to obviously bring awareness and continued awareness to it. And I think the numbers that they shared at that meeting was that there were 95 ransomware cyber attacks within public sector last year. And so far this year, there's been 50 on, cities like Traverse City, Newburgh, New York, and then bigger entities like, obviously Cleveland, Oakland, Pensacola, Jacksonville Beach, Birmingham, these places who have been, the target of it. And so again, this is obviously an Apps Associates Oracle webinar. We're going to tout the strengths of the Oracle stack and our security solution in that regard. And it does bring to mind one story that was shared with me about the city of Atlanta. And in fact, I noticed one of our guests on the line is Russell Hoppert. Russell joined us from the city of Tampa, and I know in talking to him as being the former CIO there was a lot of focus on this. And Atlanta, unfortunately, was the victim of a cybersecurity breach, and one of the systems that stayed up was Oracle because of the stack that we put together. Russell, I don't know if you're in a position to come off of mute and maybe share what the city of Tampa did, but it might be of interest to the audience just to hear a couple of your thoughts as the former CIO there. I don't know if you're able to come off mute, maybe not, but anyways.
Yeah, Glenn, I'm here if you don't mind.
Oh, sure. If you don't mind, I called on
Sure.
you to kind of unannounced. If you don't mind sharing a thought, that'd be great.
I just I just showed up because I wanted to hear the seminar, but I didn't know I'd have a walk-on role. But I'll tell you, from that security part, the big story that I always tell, we only got that one or two people in security, and keeping up with everything we had to do was really a big problem for us. And so I could see from the city of Tampa's position moving on to the Oracle platform, having literally the billions that Oracle invests in security, getting that SOC report that I have to review that has everything lined out about what we're doing, what we need to do, what was done in the Oracle system was a lot easier for me to manage on a monthly, yearly basis than having my small group try to do all that themselves. So I always said, Glenn, there was a cost of what we weren't doing at the city that got actually taken care of once we implemented Oracle. And again, from a security, I heard your folks say the same thing. We have hurricanes here in Florida. When we had an issue, recovery is just as much a part of security as any other. And for us, we could send people any place they could access the internet and keep the city running. And we would never have been able to do that with an on-prem system. So for us, again, that SaaS, a big improvement to our security posture, and one we really would never want to give up. Thanks for the chance to weigh in, Glenn. I appreciate
no,
that.
it sounds like you and Charles kind of cut from the same cloth on that thought that DR, I guess I never really thought about it. DR is a key component, I guess, Charles, in that overall security strategy, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And as Russell mentioned, being in the cloud, I no longer have to worry about OS updates, I software patching. In the cloud, you guys take care of that for us. So that's one less thing that I have to worry about, and that has been a tremendous relief. And DR perspective, we can access it anywhere in the world. So it serves multiple benefits. I believe that if you are local entity, local government, if you're not looking at cloud services, I think you're missing the mark on a number of different areas. And I know that's a bold statement, but you need to start to look at some cloud services.
And remind our audience, Charles, what you're running again of Oracle. I just want to make sure that they all know what you've got.
Yeah, we're
implemented.
running Oracle Fusion.
Yeah.
That's ERP.
And I can get back on that a little bit, Charles, for you, if you want. They're running financials, supply chain projects, planning and budgeting on the EPM side, and then Charles, you got as you talked about, the full suite of HCM. Since talent goals and performance type of modules of health and safety. So a very big footprint of applications there. So
yeah, nice.
And Charles, that's why we're trying to move on to, as we talk about the project a little bit more, and the scope of it obviously was a big part of that. What are your thoughts? We helped you lay out a phased approach to that project overall. It was about a 2-year engagement, where your team was heavily engaged, obviously. Tell us about that experience. And, was the phasing the right approach for you, you feel? What things perhaps would you have done that a little different looking back on it? Was that the right model approach-wise for you? And, tell us about your thoughts on that, if you don't mind.
Okay. Sure, absolutely. Well, first of all, if you're going down the road of an ERP replacement, selecting the right partner is very important, right? You can select the right software, but you need a partner to actually do this. So selecting the right partner is very important. We elected to move to a phased approach as opposed to more of a big bang. And the thought is that would minimize the disruption of my day-to-day business, right? If you do payroll, a portion of HCM, a portion of the financials, so forth and so on. It wasn't necessarily in that order, so I apologize, but we elected to phase it in. And the intent was to minimize the impact to our organization. you know, it still was a huge impact, but I can't imagine if we had attempted to go live with everything at once. So the phased approach worked for us.
Yeah. And I think even within that, there was probably still some, fatigue within the organization. 2 years is, lengthy time to have a, team engaged, but I think that ended up working well, but there wasn't without some challenges still, because, as we talked earlier, some of your resources, with for the legacy system were retiring, if I recall, and replacement of those was important. And yeah, anyway, that's just wanted to get a feel for that, and if any.
Yeah, I do want to add, Mike. I mean, change management is huge, right? So, you need to think about this and start planning a year or so in advance. Who's on the team? Who are the SMEs? How are we going to backfill some of the day-to-day work as associated with those actual SMEs? Additionally, as I said before, choosing a partner is important, and in my everything wasn't always a bed of roses, but realistically speaking, where we needed to make adjustments, Apps Associates, Mike, you and your team made the appropriate adjustments. Sometimes we had some personality conflicts, and these are realities of such a large project.
Right.
But you guys were pretty flexible in that regard, and allowing us to swap out individuals and or audit processes. So I think overall it went well. And the change management aspect, what I would do differently, I think I'd put a greater emphasis on the change management from an organizational change perspective, number one. And I would ensure that some of our internal groups backfill some of those positions. There were a couple of departments that said that they didn't need additional people. They could do both jobs, right? They could walk and chew gum. I don't think they realized how big of a lift it was. So that caused some challenges there.
Yeah, Charles, to that point, cities and municipalities, especially with utilities, they don't have resources that they can just take off their operational teams and 100% dedicate towards projects. So what apps likes to do is I had that clear understanding of the impact to the organization through change, and as well as the timeline of the project itself, making sure it's probably a little more elongated. And we put that project plan together that's really at a subtask level, and we try to be clear of when there's client involvement that's needed so that they can plan accordingly in the enterprise. So I think that's an important step, and really it is all around mitigating risk when it talks change and organization change and how the project needs to be implemented.
Absolutely. I think the organizational change is just as important as the actual software and the implementation of the project, because you have, you need to meet people where they are, in their life and their career. And, people inherently are resistant to change, and just understanding that and helping people through that process through communication, and involving them in the decisions.
So Charles, we talked about some of the challenges, the phasing, the impact on the resource team, both with your partners and internally. What are let's talk about some of the benefits here. Don't want to move us along too fast, but you want to be got about 20 minutes left, and we got plenty of time to cover that. So tell us about some of the objectives that you had, internally for the implementation, and some of the improvements and KPIs perhaps that you can share with us that you've been able to achieve since the implementation, and some level of stability since the go live dates.
Yeah, we touched on some of that earlier in terms of single source of the truth, how cloud services can help from a DR perspective, cloud services, making sure the updates are there. Again, we were looking for easier planning and reporting, right? One source of the truth, and being able to produce reports and or dashboards where necessary was huge for us. Near real-time information is is important to us, and I think we had that problem with some of the legacy. I talked about support and growth is huge. We want to be able to grow into this. Would love this to last us 10 years or so. Enhance features. We're enhanced features were important. You have a journeys module that you can use for onboarding. We're being a little different with that. As a matter of fact, we're actually using journeys to track administrative assets like laptops and phones and things of that nature, as well as onboarding, offboarding. There's a celebrate module where you celebrate employees. So we're starting to roll that out as well. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, Mike. From a
You are. I think you've had a lot of benefits, and you found innovative ways to utilize the application. You mentioned the celebrate, using journeys in different ways. I think we mentioned that there were a lot of manual processes that you were able to bring into a more digitized format at this point, particularly in that HCM area where you have that ability to enroll your benefits, all the different journeys that you have for onboarding and offboarding is a much stronger workflow-oriented process that you've been able to do. So those are things, yes, I was hoping you could share with some of the others.
Yeah, people love the benefits module. It's easy. You go in and make your selections with respect to the module. And again, I've worked in local government as well. We've had, additional software for that, right? Additional software for payroll, additional software for tracking training, so forth and so on. So where you can get an integrated solution, I think it works best for us. Turning it all on day one, it's not practical, but there is plenty of room for us to grow within the actual application. And we've started to do that over the last year or so.
That's great. And that really leads into, as we start, wrapping our discussion up a little bit, did you accomplish all the goals and objectives in the first phases, or certainly it sounds like there's still more to come for you as you grow into the applications, as you said. What are some of the things you might have in the future as you go forward that maybe you didn't get to the first phases or two?
Yeah, I'm smiling because you're asking IT if we accomplish all goals. Of course not, right? There's plenty more. However, I think the majority of our goals relative to implementation were accomplished. Okay, our AP process is a lot more efficient, right? So we're able to pay our bills a bit more efficiently. Our budgeting process is a bit more efficient because we're all doing it through the system. Single source of the actual truth. We can look at historical trends. It's all there. We talked about using the celebrate module. We talked about the benefits module. Some of the things that we'll continue to do. I'm not fully using onboarding and offboarding, but we will do that as well. We are utilizing the contract module, so we're building our contracts in Oracle. So again, the integrated solution and the ability to grow has been big and huge for us.
That's great. Is there a question there from somebody? I think
Yes.
question. Okay, I can't quite read that. Can you read that for me? I'm sorry.
Yes,
What
it
was
says-
the previous system they were running before they moved to Oracle? What were you on, Charles, before you made?
It was a green screen, and it has many names: Navaline, Navaline, HTE, SunGuard. If I'm not mistaken, I think they were recently purchased.
Did you retire most of those, Charles, as you've gone through this implementation as well?
Yes, we did. We're using it for a small portion of our business that we're looking at replacing now. But for the most part, it has been completely retired, particularly from an ERP perspective.
Okay. It looks like Joshua Beasley might have a question as well. Is that correct? Feel free to unmute, Joshua.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll move on here. Charles, thank you, for sharing about the project, and Obviously, you went live in multiple phases. And there were different then needs for support post go live. Sometimes hypercare, which was provided as part of our approach typically. And then obviously there's opportunities to support your team in different ways. Tell us about you mentioned we were glad to be a partner during the project. It felt like it was a good relationship, and we're now working together on more support oriented needs more long term. Tell us about your thoughts there. Is that a necessity, something that complements your team? And what are the advantages of that in your view of having that support partner, like in our case, Apps Associates?
Yeah, as previously stated, the partner is everything. A partner that you can grow with, a partner that you can close the door and have, heated discussions, but still come out, um, but still come out. I'm sorry, I just got another call.
That's okay.
But still come out on the other side, with an agreed upon plan. I'm sorry, they keep calling me. What's going on?
You're popular man.
With the agreed upon plan. So, and then ongoing support is huge. I don't have a Oracle expert on staff, right? I do have some generalists that are looking at reporting, that also assist in testing when we do updates, but I don't have to invest a lot of money necessarily in support of the actual applications. I apologize.
No worries. That's a
IT. So again, a partner is important. It's probably the most important thing, as important as the actual application, and the flexible partner is important as well. So again, with Apps Associates as well as the extended care, it gives me, it helps me to sleep at night, because I know if I have a problem, I have someone that I can call, and someone that has experience with the actual application.
That's
So
great.
Charles, there was a question in the chat that goes back to this. I think this question of ongoing support. The question from Joshua says, in a single source of truth model, what's been the most challenging system process to integrate? That was the first question. Do you have a thought on what was the biggest challenge to tackle?
I think it's going to be different for different organizations, because it depends on where your pain points are, right? Our capital organization had been accustomed to doing their capital budgeting, and I'm embarrassed to say this, but we're budgeting, $200 million in capital projects.
Sure.
And they're doing it on spreadsheets and this, that, and the other. So I would say that was the use of the EPM was difficult for us to implement, and then not because of a system challenge, but more because of organizational change.
Yeah.
Of the process.
Yeah.
Probably the other one would be payroll for us, only because our employees had a very specific want and need, and against my wishes, we did customize our timesheet a bit.
Yeah.
So I would say those two things: EPM from a capital budgeting standpoint, mainly because of organizational change, and then I guess organizational change is the same with respect to the timesheet, because people want to see their timesheet a very specific way. So I would say those were the two most.
I wouldn't beat yourself up on the planning side. Very familiar with our planning and dealt with a lot of customers, both public sector and commercial, and Excel is one of the budgeting tools of choice. So it's not uncommon to hear that. So appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, Mike, I'd ask you the same question as our partner. Where do you think the most difficult?
I think some of the payroll in California is not easy, and ensuring that all the ties into your different benefit providers and/or some of the not necessarily union, but commitments that you have to employees in that way, and the benefits are very strong. That was probably the challenging area that I can recall. is, payroll's not easy anyway, but, again, with all the things that you have commitments on, and a great organization that you are, that follow through to your employees is really important. And, it's challenging to get that. And I know we kept it on the schedule we had, but wasn't without, some challenges, you say, fun dialogue occasionally.
Yeah, one of the things that I've noticed is when you're converting from these multiple dispersed systems into a new Fusion database, is how good is that data that you're starting with? If it's garbage in, it's garbage out, and that can be a challenge for that team that has to actually do workarounds and clean up data and could prolong things and make it difficult to convert into the new system.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, and payroll wasn't challenging enough. So what we did, we went from a monthly payroll cycle to a bi-weekly payroll cycle. So that complicated it even more, right?
Yeah, that was a little bit more there. So thank you for that question from the audience. We have about 8 minutes left. Wanted to ask our panelists, mainly from the industry and SI perspective here at Oracle in our industry. Glenn, if you don't mind, give us a feel for what you're seeing at, industry looking forward, some of the things that the customers are being asked for, that you're seeing. And obviously technology is part of that. I'm going to speculate that will be part of your answers. If you could just share that with us a little bit of what, some of the demands that you feel the customer base is having. And I'll ask Mark the same thing, kind of what he's seeing as he attends different conferences in the industry.
Yeah, I'll give you some future looking thoughts. I mean, they say, understand where you're going. You have to understand where you've been. And Charles and I, we chatted before this webinar, and he and I both traveled a lot of miles in the IT space, and we've seen the major paradigm shifts from, from mainframe to client server to, internet computing, now into cloud computing. And I really believe the next wave, and again, it's not just my view, it's the view of Oracle, is that AI is going to become more and more relevant to every entity, whether it's commercial industries, public sector. And I think the real kind of cloud around AI right now is that specifically amongst users, there's skepticism about, well, how is AI, really going to help me, be more efficient in my job? So I'll give you an example. We'll go back to the security discussion. There was the days of having your sysadmins and your people monitor who had access, SOX compliance, governance, and so forth. Now imagine the system has built-in AI that is looking for some of those situations that could cause a security issue. Most of the security issues we talked about earlier, Charles, are end user related. Most people aren't finding vulnerabilities through the network or through the physical hardware. It's because of phishing schemes, right? Emails that look like they're from somebody inside the organization. And so at Oracle, we're finding that AI can now look for those anomalies when they come in and stop them from even getting to the users. So that's one use case. The other area that you're seeing AI play a big role in is in the application or in the knowledge worker. So now the days of having to hire an army of analysts to look at the information to provide the business with direction, that is now providing knowledge workers with some of that information, like which of our employees might be at most risk of leaving, for example. Can I use AI to help me do some of the basic tasks that we spend in HR, like writing a job description or a performance evaluation? Some of those use cases where they can be automated through the system. So this notion that AI is somehow going to take over all of these systems is not how Oracle sees it. We see empowering the knowledge worker to be better informed and to provide them directionally with the information they need to make those decisions. And then lastly, the other trend around AI is that you're going to see more natural language capabilities come out in Oracle. So anybody who's on the call that's either currently using Oracle, I know we had one of our questions from somebody who's currently implementing, you're now going to be able to see natural language queries come right directly into the software. You could be like in an AP screen, Charles, and your AP manager could ask a natural language question saying, which vendors are most at risk? Which suppliers are not meeting our requirements? Rather than having to go through, like you said, spreadsheet data to try to find the answers to that. So it's an exciting time. Obviously, the market is responding to the Oracle announcement from our earnings, but the momentum that you're seeing is this is that next shift. So to Charles's point, it's kind of funny, we didn't script this, but that single stack approach, the ability for a vendor to provide the security layer, the AI capabilities that wrap around a world-class kind of ERP system. You can't do that if you're hosting your ERP solution on Azure or Google Cloud. You can't do that if you're using someone else's, integration layer or someone else's security layer. And to Charles's point, that's the benefit of a small entity being able to, if you will, get the benefits of an industrial strength type solution like Oracle. So we're going to continue to innovate in this next paradigm shift, Mike, as we look through it. And I
Sure.
think that's some of the exciting things, Charles, you have to look forward to in your future projects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
We had another question here, just I
Sure.
know kind of wrapping up things as well, but it's around payment integrations. Charles, you mentioned inefficiencies. What were the largest point inefficiencies you came across around the payments integrations?
Oh, largest inefficiencies. Are we talking about AP in terms of receiving AP? It was scattered. We have, a central repository now where we receive all of our invoices. So we don't have to worry about people losing them in email, so forth and so on. We have templates that we can send to our vendors that they will pull out, that they will basically submit all of our information based on how we request that information. So I'm not sure if I'm answering that specific question. If you can elaborate, I'll be more than happy to continue.
maybe we can take that one offline also, Ken, if we can do a follow-up with that participant. And give Charles time to get some more context also.
Yeah. Are we talking about accounts payable? Are we talking about, one of the things that was different for us is that we're not our own treasury, that we use the county to cut our checks. So we submit files to the county and then they cut our checks. We have recently started a project where we're going to become our own treasury. And that we will issue our own. So we're in the midst of that project now. As a matter of fact, it probably kicked off. Where is he? I don't see him on here, but Greg is part of that project as well. That project just recently kicked off. So we've become our own treasury and we'll be issuing our own checks from an accounts payable standpoint. Right now, we were just submitting files to the actual county.
We've got about 1 minute left. We're right at the top of the hour here. And so certainly wanted to thank our panelists for joining and all the attendees also. Apologize if we didn't get to all the questions. Very, very active dialogue here, and we really appreciate the participation from our panelists and the attendees alike. Wanted to see, Charles or Mark, any final thoughts as we wrap up here? And as Ken mentioned, we're really hoping to have this be a series of webinars. Glenn, you already mentioned a couple of topics that I think it'll be very, very interesting going forward, and we certainly are going to have further dialogue. But as we wrap up here, Charles, any final thoughts? And again, let me thank you for your participation here today. It's been tremendous to having you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Honestly, it was a very well-rounded discussion. I think we touched on a lot of the things that are pertinent to ERP and ERP implementations, the applications, partners, change management, so forth and so on. So I would say just do your homework, plan in advance of the actual implementation, because there's a lot of pre-work that can be done that will help smooth out the process once you get into implementation. So plan, and do your pre-work.
Thank you for those closing thoughts, Charles. Again, thank you everybody for attending, and we look forward to seeing you in future webinars with the Apps Associates and Oracle. Thank you.
Nice job, everyone.
Thank you.